Hello and welcome to AutoTalk Live. I'm Rich Edwards, and it has been a few weeks since we were here last, probably because the man to my right, left, was on
You're
holiday.
left. I
Graham,
had the temerity of taking a couple of weeks off. Sorry.
Graham's beard, how was the trip?
Yeah, I'm actually channeling a bit of David Crawford here because David can't be with us right now. So, homage to David growing his beard out fully. This is a remainder of a New Caledonia, I think. I went cruising for the first time. A middle-aged man. I'm probably the target.
Please
market,
don't
obviously.
say that, Graham. Please choose another word.
Yeah, okay. I went on a ship sailing around the South Pacific based out of Brisbane with my lovely wife. So, does that sound better, Richard?
That sounds better.
I know. And we had the unlimited drinks package. So you can imagine how that turned out with a ship based out of Australia. It actually ran out of most of the major alcohol on the 8th day of a 10-day cruise. Like I'm talking about actually ran out.
It was a cruise out of Australia, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it was out of Brisbane. Yeah.
How happy is your cardiologist going to be with you?
Oh, he's not at all. I had blood tests just before I went deliberately. I thought I'd get this out of the way, and then we'll just not say anything for a few 3 or 4 weeks and keep quiet.
Oh, well, considering the year you had, it's last year. It's definitely a good time to live, so to speak. And Amos,
Exactly.
is it a bit smoky where you are?
Yeah, it's a shame, eh? It's there's obviously we have a view of it from our building, so I think it's definitely the smoke has calmed down. So it seems like they've probably got on top of that side, but yeah, the hard thing is with that stuff is the power of social media. There becomes a lot of stories with what's happening, So, but
Yeah. And you've been pretty busy yourself. You may have launched another company.
Yeah. Are we going there? It's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Go there, man.
Yeah.
Why should all our listeners be rushing to jump on the Accelerate DMS bandwagon?
Yeah, so this has been a long build for Sam and I, a long time. And part of the acquiring Casbolts literally a year ago in February 23 was to test this product and get it absolutely market ready. And so now we are there, and that DMS is ready to come into dealerships and to create an easy life for car dealers and for dealer principals and sales managers. So it's exciting.
Now, you're not paying me to say this right now. I've had a look through the system. It looks pretty cool. I think it brings a lot more analytics to the table than other, and I don't want to call it an entry-level system, but accessible system. This isn't something like some of the really, to be blunt, really well-built and established bigger DMSs where they've got to put hardware installations in or extensive training. This is somewhere in between, but I think it brings on a heck of a lot of analytics and a heck of a lot of cool features that I think, will be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, totally.
It's go well. Yeah.
No,
everything you and Sam does goes well.
Amos, you strike me as the sort of guy that has you have a big box in the corner full of companies you haven't used yet and ideas you haven't used yet. Like every week, like, something else new. The old DMS market, I'd be interested to see, how that looks and how it compares. Because you're right, Richard. There's really good established players in the marketplace, but like everything, things tend to get absorbed a wee bit. The acquisition of Motor Central last year, we can say it obviously, being picked up by Avanti. And if you think back to the early days, we used to use. I think we used another one, but there was Detroit, which you got on the old 3.5-inch floppy disk, literally 3.5-inch floppy disk. There was Detroit. DMS has come a long way. Within the used marketplace, I would say that there's a lot more awareness now from dealers about what may or may not be useful when it comes to analytics on their dealership. And I'd be keen to see what sort of penetration there is to used dealerships versus franchise, and what sort of suite of service that could actually make your business better at the end of the day, not just in terms of data, but actually helping you make it more profitable. Because that's the key. It's can dealers actually use the suite of services that a DMS package brings? Because I'd argue and say that half the dealers using Motor Central have got no idea what it does, apart from the fact they can list cars on Trade Me as a result.
Yeah, totally right. Yeah, Yes, it's a matter of whatever you're on is bringing the right information to the forefront for you to make good, clear decisions on where you're going with marketing, how you deal with the clients, and what you do with your cars and your stock, etc. So, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we hope Accelerate DMS is a huge success. You can read more about that in AutoTalk magazine, which is out today. Now, the other thing you can read about in the AutoTalk that is out today is it's finally happening. Talked about it a long time. We had a bit of a failed start last year. AutoTalk Live is back. We are setting up for a great event on May 7 in Auckland. We have a great array of speakers. We've got great food, and we've got some drinks at the end. A few beverages near the end of the day, perhaps. And we're working on some more great speakers too, including one probably not from the automotive thing. So yeah, really looking forward to that. I think Graham, you might give me a hand up there and up on the stage, and then there's someone there on the screen who's going to be on the stage as well. So the speakers we've got kind of signed up at the moment, and we've actually got more signed up. These ones we're announcing right now. On stage, I'm going to interview Neeraj Lala from Toyota New Zealand and Todd Hunter from Turners Automotive Group. And then speaking, we have Nick Tuffley, the ASB Bank Chief Economist. I've known Nick for many years. Really, really smart guy. Will have to be the Chief Economist of a bank. Bit of a car guy as well, so it'll be interesting to see what he brings to the table in regards to a bit of a statement of where we're at and where we're going. Daniel Morris, returning from Australia. He is Director of Deloitte Motor Industry Services, and of course they give their fantastic benchmarking data. Amos Banbury, co-founder of One Partner.
Who's that guy?
And a long list of companies. Anthony McLean, who I promise not to put at the end of the day when everyone's ready to jump into the bar. Mark Greenfield from Motor Central. Phil Haynes, Consulting Director from Juno and Jupiter. And we do have the Transport Minister will be doing kind of the opening statement today. Unfortunately, he can't leave Parliament that day, so he's going to be doing that via video. But look, great that he's taken interest in what we're doing, and we'll have some more great people to show really soon. And that's a wrong photo there. I'm going to slide that back down. So you can buy tickets now. There's a choice of theatre seating or corporate tables. You can do that at autotalk.co.nz/live. The venue is awesome. And Graham, or maybe Amos as well, you guys may have been here in your younger, more party-ish days. This is what used to be known as the Bluestone Room, or prior to that, the Bluestone Store. So it's in Durham Lane in Auckland City. It's a 160-year-old trading warehouse, basically, that became a rock venue. So for many years, it was a rock venue. Lots of big local and overseas bands played there. And it was known as the place that all the overseas bands, when they were coming to New Zealand, would come along and drink, do whatever else bands do when they're partying after their own gig. So Elton John's hung out there, the Rolling Stones have hung out there, a whole big array of other international acts have hung out there. And it's now time for the rock stars, the automotive trade, to come and hang out there.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's going to be cool. We're doing it in a really interesting layout. We're not actually having a stage, and I think this vibes with the whole music thing. We've got nice big rug and that, and a leaner and a couple of chairs, and we're going to do it from the floor because it's a nice compact venue. We're only really using half of the venue for the sessions, and the rest is for networking. So we're able to keep everyone nice and close in. It's going to be a little bit more of a conversation, I think, than last time. That's why we're bringing those interviews into it as well. So yeah, the speakers can get on the rug and talk and wave their arms around and tell them how wonderful things are going to be if you do what they say. Yeah,
sounds like a industry version of a TED Talk, actually, with a little closed circle around the room, or one of those American, talk shows where there's the whole room around you. As a former plant and general auctioneer, where you literally had to work an entire 360 audience around you as you sold, Caterpillar rock trucks and things like that. I actually think it's a really cool idea. And as you said, it just brings the audience in a bit closer. Can I just say, Mr. Edwards, and here is a shameless plug, that the last event that was held was immensely useful to people that I think that had no real intention of coming to learn anything, but came along for the, to support the idea, and came away with a head stuffed full of really interesting information. What a great format to discuss the industry at large. We had this sort of the hammer hit at the start of Deloitte saying basically your industry's stuffed. Here's what we're going to do. And then the rest of the speakers built it back up and just, well, okay, it might be stuffed here, but we're going to build it back up to here again. We all learned a lot of stuff. Some really interesting people with takes and stuff that you never thought that you might need to know. And an argument so that anyone that was in that room came away having felt like they had this expansion of knowledge that they went away from. The feedback was universally really good. So if you're a transacting dealer, might I say, because I know the corporate end of town, we tend to go to these sort of events anyway. But if you're just a regular dealer, you buy and sell vehicles in whatever capacity, you don't think events like these are for you, I tell you what, you're going to learn stuff. And you're going to learn stuff that you're going to take away and you're going to implement and put into place at your dealership, and you're going to be ahead of your competition because you know more about things than your competitor who didn't go does. It's as simple as that.
Exactly. Yep. So hopefully we'll see. Well, we're going to see you there. We will see you there, and hopefully we'll see a lot of you dealers there. And I think it's good value too. We look pricing wise. It's a small increase on last year, but we are still way less a day than going for double ADA, and I don't think you get necessarily the exposure and the chance to network with the speakers that you do at the double ADA. And you don't have to fly to Blimmin, Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane.
Can I say too, that double ADA, when I went, I was with you there a couple of years ago, Richard, the message that Deloitte gave was amazing. It's such good info. And so whether it was new or used, they had something for everyone, and the delivery and the information and the quality of what they, the insights they gave was phenomenal. It was by far the best, I thought, message at the AADA for the whole of Australia conference. So to have them over, it's awesome.
Yeah. Daniel Morris came last time. It was very popular. We've avoided product-centric sessions this time. Look, you're not going to get someone saying, here's how to sell this, here to sell that. It's all we're trying to be a lot more higher level this time. Even you, Amos, you're not coming here directly talking about DMSs and finance brokering. We think it's really important. We think there's enough speakers, enough content out there to do that. Let's get on there now. autotalk.co.nz/live. If you jump on now and you go to buy a ticket, there is a little bit of branding from the last session. It's going to disappear in the next hour. We're just waiting for it to tick over a certain time in the East Coast of the US, and then that'll just disappear automatically. So I'm kind of stuck with that at the moment, but it's fine. It's just there. Right. Yes, exactly. The other thing we're doing this time is we've actually put in a dealer minimum number. So last time we had an issue of we had a lot of corporates turn up and probably not enough dealers. We're open with that with our clients. This time, we've put some controls in place to make sure it's really dealer focused. So yeah. Right. Now we have nearly 3 weeks of news to run through. I've done this in chronological order, so we're going back to pretty much the day after, a couple of days after our last stream, and we're going to hammer through this, guys, because we're already 20 minutes in. We had someone put a comment on one of the videos saying that that they were too long and they only wanted 20 minutes. So I don't know how we fix that. I wonder if we hammer through the news in the first 20 minutes in the future, and then we sit there and talk BS for the true diehards. I don't know. Well,
you get rid of me for a start. I'm gone burgers. I'm tail lights.
But as far as I'm concerned, if you want to watch the 20-minute version, then you watched up to 20 minutes. You get a lot of good stuff in the first 20 minutes. It's just us going crazy after that.
We just wasted a minute talking about wasting time, so let's get on with
it. Right, so where are we? Where's that gone there? Anyway, discharge without conviction for Wellington dealer protesters. So one of the rail protesters that sprayed paint on a Wellington car dealership last year has been given a discharge without conviction. Blah blah blah. Basically, they're letting it off.
Slap with a rail ticket because they couldn't slap on the bus ticket, could they?
Yeah, so they made her pay. They've required her to pay $500 towards a charity and $400 towards water blasting the dealership. It's gone to the air ambulance charity Life Flights. That's a good thing. And I'll take a wild guess that probably the dealer will slap the money into charity as well. So this was the attack on Gasly Motors. said the irony being was that half the cars in there were plug-in hybrids or electrics. They did it again at Giltrap. So we've probably got more cases coming up. Now, there were 2 of them, and one of them is still yet to go before trial. She kind of did this plea deal. He is probably wanting to try and make an example of the situation, which will no doubt end well.
Sounds like a good cost-benefit ratio to me for protesting, isn't it? At the end of the day,
Yes.
$900 with the fines, you do that again in the heartbeat, isn't it? And we're not going to go there. I'm just not going to get the whole, isn't that pathetic, yada, yada. We all know it. We're saying it. We're thinking it right now.
Come on, Amos. Do you want rail down there?
Oh, it just annoys me. I feel sorry for any dealership that has this. It takes attention off what they're trying to do and what they're there for. So
I don't know. I feel like it got Gasly's in the headlines and got told everyone that they had wonderful electric vehicles inside.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the frothy mouthers that do this sort of stuff with their hand-knitted jerseys and cups of organic, I don't know, tea and stuff. And they're not listening. End of the day, they've just worked out $900 is a pretty damn good deal to go and spray paint a dealership or 2. Let's go and do it again.
Hey, look, Graham, both you and I know there's some characters in this automotive industry, and I wonder what happens when they go and spray the wrong dealership.
Yeah, that's what we're all waiting for.
Yeah. Perhaps we could give some hot tips. Hot tips.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Now, dealer liquidation thwarts woman's refund for clocked Subaru. An Auckland woman seeking a refund for a Subaru vehicle that was sold with a tampered odometer claims she has $17,000 out of pocket, as the dealership that sold her vehicle was liquidated at the end of October 2023. Freya Few bought an ex-Singapore, well, there you go, 2012 Subaru XV from 465 Motors Limited in Penrose on October 2, 2022, believing the car travelled 56,500 kilometres. Less than 12 months later, after travelling a further 6,000 kilometres, the vehicle presented severe issues with the engine and air conditioning. A mechanic recommended a full engine replacement. Few then obtained the final Singaporean service record for the car, which showed it had travelled 183,993 kilometres. She presented evidence of the odometer tampering to the owner of 465 Motors, who promised her a refund. But Fu then discovered the company was placed into voluntary liquidation by a shareholder on October 30. Confirmed by Rogers Ready liquidator Paul Vlasic, who says there was no funds in the current account belonging to the business. Yeah. So yes, she paid for the car on her credit card. So she's trying to get a refund via the credit card company of $1,000 chargeback.
There are more red flags than a cheap circus act on this one, aren't there?
Yes, this stuff is sold out of an old villa with a car park in Penrose. We had
full of confidence right from the very start. And
a young woman with no experience in the industry as its sole director, which was interesting. And the fact that there was one deal go south and they liquidated suggests to me that there were a lot of deals that could go south.
And we still see that now. And I know we're not here to talk about things in depth, but 2 points on this. One is there are more than a number of that style of dealerships around where they just literally pop up. They've got people with zero industry experience, zero, what I'd argue is New Zealand business knowledge, and just pop up, ta-da, today we're selling cars. And you know how that's going to end. Every single time you know how that's going to end. You're just watching your watch or your calendar and you're thinking, is it this month or next month? Shame on us as an industry. And the second thing is, and I'm really sorry, if you're dealing with stuff out of Singapore, I'm going to offend you right now, but it has been known for so long that one of the remaining bastions of odometer issues is Singapore. And if you're going to shake your head and deny it, gosh, you're probably not watching this show right about now. Come on, industry. I mean, all it does is it taints us with a brush that we should not have to be painted with, because the Singapore stock is so different from Japan when it comes to ability to verify. We're not buying cars there because they're better cars. We're buying cars there because they're cheaper. And why are they cheaper, people? Enough said.
I'm just impressed someone could do 183,000 kilometers in Singapore.
Or Malaysia.
I know, Malaysia.
No. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well,
I think the credit card thing is an interesting one. Buying a car on your credit card. Now, that's an interesting one. I guess I've got a credit card that has a I think it's gone up now, but a 9.9% credit rate for a while. So, I mean, Amos, a credit card's actually a wee bit of a force sometimes in the finance market.
Well, I think we only see customers that are actively looking to finance. So we're down the other side. We were probably not negotiating. It's probably more Graham's side, maybe at the dealership. But I do know that there is obviously some benefits. Like sometimes you can actually put a lump sum on and get the benefit of points. That sort of air points and then I remember that from my yard days where someone would want to do that, literally put the credit on like they had the money. But the transactional point to go through the credit card gives you those points to spend. Yeah. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting one, that one. But yeah, I mean, look, I think it's the ASB Lite card that I've got. Yeah, it was 9.9. I think it's like 12 now. But that's competitive almost in the market at the moment. It's quite competitive.
It is.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Minister announced his plan to reform triple CFA. So this will be the third.
How many reforms is it now?
Yeah.
So is this going to be an actual reform this time, or just like a paper over the cracks reform? Amos, this is.
I think it's going to be fairly substantial. But Amos, have you had a look at this? Any idea how substantial?
Yeah, and any lenders and banks are super excited about it. Yeah, it is absolutely the chat at the moment. Any sort of ability to have some lenience around that, how you look at discretionary spending, what bank statements you need, they are all very excited. Because the one thing it does do, it obviously makes it easier through the way through, but also from a staffing point, a lot of that is an admin staff needed at the banks and finance companies, so that helps them place those staff somewhere else, or have less admin costs. So,
is the shift to the FMA notable as well? I mean, the Commerce Commission does have a habit of going a bit campaigny and kind of pursuing people to make an example of them. Are the FMA now doing the same kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose it's it's just from probably that side. The ones campaigning or going against people outside the line are the ones that are actually, coming in with the hammer to, with the rules. But yeah, there hasn't been much lately. Like no one's been made an example of or that sort of thing. Obviously, there was the one a couple of months ago that we touched on AutoTalk Live, but yeah.
Yep. Well, we're interesting to see this. So, Commerce Commission and Commerce and Consumer Affairs. Oh, look, a coffee's just been passed through the window at me. Thank you.
Can I have one too, please?
Commerce and Consumer Affairs Minister Andrew Bailey told the Financial Services Council conference that the government will reform the Credit Contracts and Consumer Finance Act to ensure vulnerable consumers are protected without preventing Kiwis from getting the credit they can afford. And that's a point there, because my understanding is that certainly if you go to the deepest, darkest depths of South Auckland or parts of Christchurch or Pairua, is that the people that this was meant to save are realistically either being forced into vehicles or simply being driven outside the legal finance market. Is that your guys' take as well?
Yeah, 100%. It just did damage in the wrong place. It made it hard for good people.
Yep. Yeah. So they're going to do a two-step process. The Financial Markets Conduct of Institutions Amendment Act (COFI) will also be reformed. Whole pile of stuff coming through there, and by the sound of it, Amos, you guys are excited. Now, statistics for January, and I have a different play on this to everyone, right? All these papers out there, and I hate saying this term, but the mainstream media did all these headlines about the death of electric vehicles and all these sales. Where have they gone? What happened? CCD's killed electric vehicles. Blah blah blah. And I'm sitting there going, they've entirely missed the point, in that EVs were always going to suck for January, February, and March this year. We did 3-4 months worth of sales in November, December. They'll come back somewhere near the mid-year. They're not going to be as good as they were, but they'll come back. The interesting numbers to me was that January was long expected to be this massive boom of commercials. All these brands had months and months of deferred orders ready to go, and they were going to deliver so many utes, and it was going to be massive. It wasn't even the biggest month in the last 12 months for light commercials. And that is a way bigger concern than any slump in electric vehicles, because that is a sign of economic softening and economic issues. As predicted,
I
they predicted
hope we're
boom.
not celebrating this. This is a really concerning story.
We're not celebrating it. No, that's the point. It was just we had all the media piled on these EVs going down. That was market manipulation. It was artificial. This is the concerning point. A predicted boom in commercial registrations following the end of the clean car discount appears to have been at best muted by softer market conditions, with December commercial deliveries at incredibly low levels, and the year a slow one with the exception of a huge 6,000 unit month in June following changes to the CCD scheme. January is set to be a big one. And to an extent it was, with 4,526 units, up from 3,199 a year ago. But this was still around 1,300 units behind the June figure and lower than the total recorded in 2022. Our industry sources suggest soft economic conditions and banks less willing to put it on the house are hemming the market in. And then we go into that there. So it's not, the CCD isn't the big story here, isn't it? It seems to be that we are starting to see a market that's really struggling.
I don't know about starting, Richard. I think the market's been struggling for quite some time. I'd actually argue probably since July. I think if we charted it, we'd say about July is when we saw the real softening occur. And if you think about an analogy like I've just been on a cruise ship. It's the world's 25th largest cruise ship. For that thing to slow down, they start slowing down somewhere near Africa. And then by the time we get to New Caledonia, you've actually reached zero speed. And I think our economy has been a lot like that. The slowing down happened. We weren't even noticing. And it's taken that long for that effect to start to see its way through. And it's right down to the people that make my coffee every now and then in the morning. Eventually, they see that final effect as the slowdown occurs and it's just working its way through the economy. It's trickling down from the house buyers to the house fixers to the builder to the ute, down to the person that makes the coffee in the morning. And I think we're now at that coffee in the morning point where there's been really muted consumer activity piled on top of consumer concern. And Amos, I know you and I might disagree a wee bit about this one, and it's regional, maybe it's inter-industry, but I think it's been, what I'm hearing, it's been a really tough month or two in the industry. And there's no real sign of it improving. There's no sort of over the horizon we're going to see or waiting for this weekend or that weekend. There's just a general malaise amongst buyers to actually commit to a larger financial purchase. Yes, there are still people that need cars. We still have an immigrant market that needs vehicles. But the everyday people that just upgrade their vehicle every 3 years because that's what they do, or they feel like upgrading, or whatever reasons, they're the ones we're just not seeing in that volume we're used to. That market's just really quiet. That to me is really concerning as an industry. I don't care whichever way you cut it. It's quiet.
Mm-hmm. And how much of a role is finance playing in this, Amos? I mean, I understand the car finance industry itself has been seeing a big uptake in the last 7 or 8 months as the traditional home loan mortgage funding model is just kind of in the toilet. Is that still continuing, or are you guys seeing a softening now? Or I mean, not just yourself, but do you believe the broader market?
Yeah, I think, there's a real active play from every lender at the moment to work with someone and work with you and work with dealerships and brokers, etc., to create solutions. I think, so that would show they're all chasing it hard, categorically. And then, I do agree with a lot of what you said, Graham. You can see a difference from that period, like mid 23 through to now. I think we were talking before the show as well, and I think it's a real good time I was talking to a dealer yesterday, and I would absolutely go back to those basics and take stock and go, what's on my website? How does it look? Are the photos beautiful? Have I got a good description? What is the customer experience when they come onto the yard or apply online or put an inquiry online? How quick are we replying? And it's a good time while you have time in a dealership, to go back and look at your whole process of a customer experience and see if there's things you can make better. And when you do get that one moment of a client in front of you, you just nail it, they have a great experience, and you sell the car. So it is hard, but sometimes the hard times are a good opportunity to go back through and look at your whole business and how you interact and what it looks like. And,
Absolutely. Yeah. Good time to review. Takes
100% on that one.
Invest in
flag another idea?
AutoTalk Live.
Yes, that's true. There's another point on this to sort of raise in this forum, because it covers off both of you to an extent, but certainly you, Amos, is one thing we're struggling with up here is the proliferation of 9.95% finance offers out there online. So every man and his dog, or every person and his dog on Facebook, for example, is advertising, finance from 9.95%. Can't buy money for 9.5%, let alone sell it. And particularly targeted at the low income, yes, Richard, the low income beneficiary. We finance anybody, no deposit, low deposit, bad credit, no credit.
Learner's license, okay.
Learner's license, okay. Fresh immigrant, okay. 2 pay slips, okay. Finance from 9.95%. And it's all over everywhere. And we all know, I'm sure that we all know in the room that it's almost impossible to buy money at 9.95% right now, unless you found it under the mafia's mattress. So how the hell you can sell it at 9 and people are not selling it for that at all. When you come down to sit in the dealership and you say, okay, well, my name is XYZ and I've just arrived from the Philippines and I'd like to buy that little car over there, and I hear finance is 9.95%. I've got no income, haven't got a job yet, but I'd like one because my wife's got 6 kids at home and we only have 7, so I'm mind looking after this right now. The salesman says, absolutely, we can do that 9.95% finance at 22.5. Just sign here, please. And I've actually got an anecdotal story that I can't really say in a forum like this, but I've heard a couple of stories now that are exactly that. But the only difference being that the number at the end wasn't disclosed until the documents had already been signed. So it's a common tactic. And as it is tough out there at the moment, we're seeing more and more, I think, of what I would call misleading marketing around finance rates, finance affordability. It's
I wonder
a
if those
thing.
guys are following the triple CFA.
Oh, you think? Oh, I hadn't thought of that, Richard.
It's funny you say, because we have the ComCom chasing us quite a bit, like regularly, to see what is marketed and what is actually delivered.
Yep.
So, but sometimes if it's a smaller company, they just got the ability to pivot and move away and close and reopen and, but the advertising has been done.
Because they're chasing the big fish. Might I argue and say that ComCom is chasing the big fish right now, it would appear, and they're not really looking too hard at the little fish in the pond that are really the problem. I could show, but a brochure sitting next to me here right now from a very earnest broker that's been to see us twice this week already, and his card says finance, no immigrant finance, etc., for 9.95%, and I said, bullshit. You're never going to finance these people third tier at 9. What's even written down on your card here for? And he was very earnest to explain to me that there's certain circumstances. And then he's looked at me and went,
yeah.
So I went, but it's happening. It's a big issue out there, and I think for the trade, it's just yet something else to overcome. When times are tough, this sort of stuff, these rats start crawling out of the woodwork.
Mm-hmm. Right, let's go on to the next story, and that is the used import statistics. So, clean car gone, year-on-year used import registrations jumped 25%. So, despite the doom and gloom, it was actually pretty darn good in the used import sector, even if we would suggest there may be a little bit of pre-stocking before the end of CCD. So, 25% up year-on-year to 8,915 units. Twitter, of course, the top. Now, interesting is in the model mix, I think, of this. In that it's still the hybrids that are running at the top. The Aqua, the Prius, to a lesser extent Excella. Interesting to see that we had a few models that haven't been in the top 10 in recent times come into the top 10. So Subaru Impreza, Nissan X-Trail, Nissan Serena jumping back in there. Obviously some demand for some of that bigger stuff floating around that may have attracted a fee previously. Have you sold a few fee-attracting cars recently, Graham? Or previously fee-attracting cars, Graham?
Yep, there's definitely more interest in that sort of stuff. And given that, I've got a Nissan Caravan up there right now, which up to the end of the year had a $2,800 CCD fee on top. Well, that's just gone. And that's a sizable portion of money from a consumer's perspective they're not going to have to pay. So, yes. And those are big cats. People sometimes don't realise just how big those CCD fees could be. at the upper end of that marketplace. There's also another factor too, is that in Japan, the market for some of that stuff has softened a wee bit. You mentioned X-Trails and things, Safari XVs, they become a bit more viable. And as they become more viable in Japan, it sort of happens that in New Zealand, there's probably more of a market for that bigger stuff right now too. Don't forget the price of petrol over the summer wasn't too bad. So people were starting to think, oh, maybe the petrol price isn't so bad after all, I can afford that. I mean, as of yesterday, wow, back to reality again, over $3 a litre. But people's sentiment is a funny thing, isn't it? It's
I wouldn't know.
Richard.
Anyway.
You'd be no fun in South Australia right now with those blackouts, would you?
I'd be fantastic. I'd be running my house off my car.
For 46 hours until the battery ran down, then you kind of...
We've been through this. So we had no power during the floods last year.
I know.
We ran the house for about 3 days. So just anyway.
Just
Optimus acquires Australian vehicle logistics operator. Japan-based Optimus Group has agreed to acquire the auto care services business in Australia from Lynx Cargo Care Group. Auto care services has been providing comprehensive end-to-end solutions to the automotive industry for more than 60 years. These services include vehicle transport, storage, and processing from some of Australia's largest OEMs, along with automotive dealerships, rental and fleet providers, and other customers across the automotive industry. So an interesting one seen by there. That business is massive. Basically, cars land in the country, and it might be a case that AutoCare not only ships them, but they change the badges, slap in some radios, all sorts of other stuff that they offer there right through, I think, to grooming it and chucking it on the yard. So a really interesting and big investment there by Optimus Group. This, of course, follows its purchase of AutoPact, one of Australia's largest privately owned automotive dealership groups, that has a turnover that's probably not that far off the New Zealand automotive industry. And of course, they own a couple of other things over there. And in New Zealand, Nichibo, Auto Finance Direct, some logistics operations, and recently a stake in Auto Trader. So Optimus is growing. But my understanding is they're not going to grow. They're not going to necessarily buy too much in New Zealand because we're almost just too small for them. It's kind of sad. Wish we were bigger.
Well, the big picture here, Richard, is that you just intimated that Australia is still, when it comes to particularly the used sector, Australia is still the Wild West. It's sort of New Zealand back in 1990 or so when it comes to the import industry, and stubbornly refuses to move very far from that. I'm actually over next week with Ainvia, and we'll talk about this stuff going on forward. But what's really obvious to anybody at all is that Optimus are clearly taking an approach where New Zealand took a long time to get to that vertically integrated model. And it was fractured right up into the 2000s. Optimus have obviously looked at this and said, right, we're going to jump the gun on this one. We're going to own the model for us right from the get-go. And they can then build the market already having the components in place, as opposed to growing the market and then figuring out how you can bring it together. I think, I'd expect nothing less. There's some smart people behind Optimus in Japan. And I think this is, I would call it a very smart decision, that they're going to own the pathways that they need, including that market. So it's going to become a true E2E marketplace from Japan to the consumer in Australia. That's smart. If you could do it, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Right, next one. MTF Finance celebrates record 2023 with inaugural dealer award. So they've thrown some dealers some nods there. Staff excellence for being an excellent ambassador for the brand, going the extra mile for customers. Tash Haley, Morrison Cars in Christchurch, for business excellent, highest year-on-year net receivables growth. Stephen Zhang of Mega Cars, Christchurch. Culture of responsibility, recognise the dealership most engaged and supportive of compliance at MTF Finance, adopting a culture of responsible lending, awarded to Dion Prentice of Dion's Motor Group. And then best performing new dealership, that's Nicole Pye at Buy This Car. Why are South Island dealers so good, Amos? Why are they winning all the awards?
Don't know. I'm not so familiar with the first one, but I know Tash, she's awesome. I think a good staff member is a good staff member too,
Yeah, exactly.
Anywhere in the country, but yeah.
Sinclair confirms move to Winger Motors Auckland. Andy Sinclair has confirmed his appointment as Winger Motors Auckland Chief Executive following his resignation from Hyundai New Zealand late last year. Sinclair spent more than 14 years with Hyundai Motors, rising from National Sales Manager to General Manager, and then Chief Executive of the brand. AutoTalk understands that Scott Kelsey, who is the General Manager of the Isuzu and Renault brands under the AutoDrive Holdings umbrella, has now had the Hyundai brand added to his portfolio of responsibility. Sinclair brings both retail sales and service acumen to Winger Motors. Before Hyundai New Zealand, he was the general manager of a dealership, a contract sales director for another, and owned and operated a pit stop franchise in Palmerston North for more than 9 years. His arrival at Wingers coincides with the company's focus on a new brand in the Auckland region. From late February, Wingers Motors will represent the Amoda and Jaku brands in its showrooms on the North Shore, East Auckland and Pukekohe. Interestingly, no longer represents Alfa Romeo, Maserati, Jeep and Ram brands. They've kind of been picked up by Andrew Sims, I believe. But it will be in Auckland, but it will be still down in Pukekohe and Hamilton, in addition to an Alfa Romeo service centre in Hamilton. We understand, we haven't confirmed this yet, that the old Winger Motors Alfa Romeo Maserati showroom, so that spectacular building next to the BMW dealership and kind of in that strip with Ferrari, is going to become a Lexus dealership. It's going to move out of the facility over in Grey Lynn. So interesting move there in Newmarket. I kind of felt like Newmarket was kind of softening a little bit, but maybe we're going to see some shake-ups that might make it just a little more interesting again. And another senior figure from the automotive distributor space coming into retail. So interesting to see there. After we saw Rodney Gillard. A lot of respect for Andy. I think Hyundai New Zealand can be a bit of a wild beast to tame at times, and he did a very good job there. So, yeah, interesting one. This is a fun one. PHEV owners want to remove plugs to avoid ruck. And all we'll say from that is that you can't do it. Grow up, move on.
Was that Graham, just a case of, well, I was going to say, is it a case of, Bob from Ekatahuna with his cardigan knitted by his wife who decided he would do that, and he made national news media? Nobody else in the country thought of doing that, but Bob somehow had a connection to somebody who worked at, News Hub or something, and became like, who thinks of this stuff? I don't. Maybe I just work in the wrong
They generally
circles.
just circle Reddit and see what's gets said on there. But I had a bit of a think about it. Basically, to do it, you'd have to obviously remove the infrastructure from your vehicle. Then you'd have to buy an electrical engineer. You'd have to get that signed off by an electrical engineer. You'd have to have the car LVVTA certified. If you could get an LVVTA certifier at the moment, because it's a very long time to do that, and get the car re-registered as a factory-built vehicle as opposed to what it is. So you'd pretty much never be able to insure it properly again. And by the time you've done... Yep, by the time you'd done all that, you would have spent about enough to travel about 100,000 kilometers on road user charges.
Or and then an ice Outlander or an ice Prius.
Yeah. And then in like 12 months' time, we'll probably have ruck for everything, and the whole argument becomes moot again. So,
and you've got to sell your car,
and you'd want your plug back. So just don't. Graham, I gather
sheds, yeah.
You have a bit of a bugbear with some of these stories going about in regards to hybrids and plugs and things like that.
I do, and this is actually on a more serious note. Because we deal here at Croydon's, not exclusively, but certainly a high proportion of what we sell are hybrids, mainly Toyota hybrids, other stuff too. We've noticed Aquaman, a real uptick in people coming on and saying, look, I don't want to buy one of those hybrid cars because I've heard that they're going to have road user charges on them. I don't want one of those hybrid cars. You got anything else? Now, we obviously concentrate on hybrids. So for people to adamantly explain to us that they don't want a hybrid anymore because it's road user. And I've said this to you in various conversations, explaining is losing in this industry. Once somebody comes on with a mindset, dug back a little bit deeper, and it turns out that it may have originated from Radio New Zealand, had a series of pieces, obviously both to air and then in print online, and they got syndicated and picked up by the channels, that hybrids were going to be requiring road user charges. Now, what it comes down to is journalist shorthand. So for a header saying hybrids will pay road user charges. In the story context, there's plug-in hybrids, but for the header, and we all know people's short attention spans. Dottie and Ed from the village down the road, all they see is on the TV1 news at night is hybrids eligible for RUC. And so people are starting to question that, and they're not paying the attention to whether those vehicles are actually eligible for road user or not. And really, when it comes down to is what actually is a hybrid. And it's highlighted a couple of points. First of all, the news media, I think, is remiss in using hybrid as a shorthand for anything at all that has a second battery. And secondly, people are still remarkably uneducated about what a hybrid actually is. And all the different acronyms that get bandied around is probably our worst enemy. People, what's an ICE? What's a PHEV? What's a BEV? What's an HEV? And people just genuinely don't know. The beauty of the hybrid term is at least it was reasonably easy to explain and understand. But once it gets used to cover off everything, it all gets lumped in the same pail. And I think it's a real concern that the media has not done us justice by better headlines for a start. Yes, the text explains it, but we all know people see the headline and that's it. And that's what gets flashed around the news. And secondly, we've probably not done a great job at explaining what actually is a hybrid. I know we have these conversations about the beauty of EVs versus hybrids, and there are those that say, hybrids are, they're just a stepping stone to an EV and they should be banned because they're preventing EV uptake. Bullshit. Get away from yourself. Get off your high horse. For the average consumer in the used marketplace with $14,000, $15,000, $16,000 to spend, and economy is key. Right now, a hybrid makes really, really good economic sense, but it's being undone by the mixed signals coming up from the media about road user charges and what they are, and what all these other acronyms mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, I just think it was a mistake or laziness from Radio New Zealand as opposed to any nefarious plot to unseat.
I don't think it was a.
Now, I've gone and done some research on this and spoken to the key trade organisations and also Neeraj Lala from Twitter New Zealand. They're not necessarily seeing the same trend, though there is, agreement that perhaps maybe some more educational correction should be put out there into the market. But yeah, it's a tricky situation. I've similarly had people want me to make it really clear to the market that Ruck for All is coming. That's important. They believe to the market that people need to be making decisions in the context of what's going to happen in the future. I think the minister, now that he's been so strong on saying that, does actually need to be clearer on that. Because, and I say this in my editorial in AutoTalk magazine, available for free download today from autotalk.co.nz, that realistically, unless he does that, and even with doing that, we are headed for yet another year of market manipulation. Because the change to the update review of the CCS and the implications of Ruck for All, if not handled rightly, could end up manipulating the market almost as much as what we've seen over the last 2 years. All this stuff is not open. He's going to have to be very careful, and that he's fallen into the same trap that Michael Wood did, and that he's announced stuff before it's going live. Mm-hmm. So, I'm speaking at a fleet conference in 2 weeks' time down in Christchurch, and one of the points I'm going to be talking about there is you can't just make your buying decisions, your ordering decisions now based off what you're seeing in front of you now. You're going to have to take into account what might happen in the next year. With Ruck at the moment, electric vehicles and PHEVs may not necessarily be the best choice for some fleets. But what happens if in 12 months' time the minister manages to do what he's promised and put Ruck in for all, and it ends up that it's actually absolutely the other way around again, and you're stuck with this fleet of 500 vehicles you based on the decision on the rules today? It's a minefield, and we are at risk of seeing continued market manipulation by the government by him announcing and promising these things. If he's going to do it, he's got to do it. Because at the moment, things are a little bit muddy. Because in 12 months' time, hybrids. In 12 months' time, I'm guessing 12 months' time, in a year's time, if what he said so far is correct, hybrids will be paying Ruck, and maybe that's what some of these people are referring to.
Well, then again, the message should be that everything's going to pay Ruck. I personally, Richard, I think that 12 months is a optimistic timeline at the very best. I think they're going to come unstuck with a lot of the framework around Ruck implementation. And if we do see it, it'll be in a very limited scope across certain brackets only. I just think, government like any government, doesn't matter which ilk it is, talk is cheap when it comes to ideas. The key is always the implementation, and in this case,
we'll see.
Implementation.
The argument goes, the implementation is, you can't do this, you can't do that. But the reality is, at the moment, was it like 40+% of the fleet runs ruck already? We're not talking about having a small percentage of the market switch to it and having to drag 90% of the market across to this unusable system. It's a system that 40 to 50% of the fleet has been using for a very, very, very long time. And
no. This is where you get unstuck, is because the majority of, not all, but the majority of the market that currently pays ruck is commercial. It's fleets, it's company, it's business operators, everything from your taxis through to your commercial operators. But the commercial entities, and this is transactional stuff.
I wouldn't know off the top of my head, but I would take a wild guess that about 50% of those are user-chooser one-man bands.
And maybe so, but they've bought into that. They've either through their own company, their own limited liability company that they bought the Ranger through. The awareness from the ground up about ruck, and even then, we know that the holes that vehicles fall through when it comes to ruck repayments are terrible. Put all that aside for a second. I still think that the private marketplace for privately owned and operated vehicles is just a completely different monster to tame than the current commercial diesel market. And I think there are real issues ahead for any government that tackles this.
I don't believe that Simeon cares about that subtlety. I mean, look at the brick level way they bought in ruck on electric vehicles, and they should have. That's totally fine. But there was no discussion there about a lot of those being private market vehicles and it being an issue to put.
But that's because they had the audience with them on that one. Okay, the overall sentiment from the public was that EVs should pay their way. Roadies are on everything. I think that's got different smelly optics for a government fairly keen to make sure that it.
But you've got to look at Simeon's statements though. Now, Amos is probably getting tired of this discussion by this point. Simeon has said very clearly that they will be applying ruck for all. Not we are going to look at doing ruck for all. Not we're going to investigate or review ruck for all. We are doing ruck for all. There's no leeway in his statement, so it's happening, and that's the tricky thing. They don't generally say something that strongly if they think there's going to be issues, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, this conversation in 12 months' time, we'll see how it's panned out, shall we? We're all political cynics on this show, I'm sure. So,
I was going to try and drag a quick answer about keep pushing them about when ruck for all would be coming, but his comms person is on paternity leave at the moment, and we'll see him back in a couple of weeks, hopefully, and I'll keep pushing as to what's happening. Now, a exclusive story to Auto Media Group, AutoTalk and EVs and Beyond. Another Chinese brand confirms New Zealand arrival. Another Chinese brand has announced its intention to enter the New Zealand market, with Zeekr poised to make its debut in the bustling electric vehicle sector. Well, it's not particularly bustling at the moment. It's part of the Geely Group, so very similar to Polestar and Volvo. In fact, some of their models are shared with Volvo, so the X you see there is very similar to the Volvo EX30, and then they've got the big 009 People Mover coming. So that brand is coming soon. I'm also working on a story about two other Chinese electric brands at least coming to New Zealand, but I'm now hearing there might be more. So I was looking at a Skywell in Sydney the other day that supposedly has a small operator trying to bring that here, and a Series which is tied to Huawei, the phone company, that's supposedly on the move as well. So more Chinese brands coming to New Zealand.
And Richard, are they saying that they're going to come direct or through a current distributor here in New Zealand, or what's the chat there?
So Zeekr are setting up a distributor in Australia, but whether that means they'll do it themselves or work through an existing partner is unclear. So, for example, BYD has a BYD entity in Australia, but then they distribute through EV Direct in Australia and Atico in New Zealand. I would suggest that a lot of these are going to be through intermediaries, and I think you're getting into the distribution business, Amos, because people
No.
ask. People ask.
No, because usually then you can pick what dealership they're going to.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing with Zika is that they've not been clear at all about what's going on in New Zealand, and yet they've already got a partner to an extent in that the Giltrap Group distributes Volvo and it distributes Polestar. The logical answer would be for Zika to go there, but they do operate somewhat separately, so it'd be interesting to see there. Obviously, there's the usual players that are pretty prominent in handling some of these smaller brands, at least in the setup. You've got the Atico Group with BYD. They've been known to bring in new brands in the past. Of course, Hyundai the Auto Distributors, I think, which is the offshoot of Hyundai New Zealand that does Isuzu Ute and Renault. They've got the potential to do that, and also the Armstrong Group. They could be players in this space as well. So there's all sorts of options there. We'll see. Lots more brands coming. We're clearly being a bit targeted here, and that if they go right hand for the UK, they may as well flick it to New Zealand as well. So we will see. Interesting one to see there. Zika is certainly one of the more exciting brands, except for the name. It's a smashing together of Gen Z and geek. So I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. You start a car company out these days, you can call it whatever the hell you want, can't you? Because all the cool names got used up a while ago. I come back to my original point that I made a few shows ago, that I'm still a bit concerned for New Zealand that we have almost too many new entrant brands and confusion by consumers about what to choose. I mean, look, that's great if you're the person selling Zekas and you aim to sell 10 Zekas a month and you sell 11. But I'm really concerned about what this does for the market overall. If some of these brands are not successful and we have very short-term model cycles, or for that matter, short-term distributor cycles as a result of brands coming and brands going, and consumers being turned off the experience of buying from a relatively new player that may be a good one with intentions to stay in the marketplace, and indeed does, that has sullied somewhat by fly-by-night. It's no different from the used industry. All intentions until such time as you're not, and then suddenly you're not there anymore. Is that a factor, Richard? Do you see this as just so much stuff coming down right now that our market actually really isn't big enough to absorb all these different brands? There's going to be some attrition somewhere.
There's going to be
existing players or new players.
Yep, there's going to be. You're going to see some of these brands that will come and go. And I think that's somewhere times where it's helpful that some of these intermediate distributors handle them, because they can handle parts on an ongoing basis to an extent. Rather than coming in direct. I think the ones, if we look at the ones that come through, I think BYD is here to stay. I believe that the new iteration of Chery / Amoda / Jaku is very much here to stay. I had a look at their new electric vehicle the other day, and some of those products I think are interesting. I think Zika will likely be here to stay, but some of those other brands I mentioned, I don't know. And that's going to be more down to whether they exist in the future in China, let alone whether they exist here. There is a lot of attrition within the Chinese market coming up. The interesting thing about Zika is that it's not going to come into the mainstream value section of the market as we've seen with other EVs before, other Chinese brands before. That's going to be a premium brand. So I think what we're going to see over the next little bit is more premium Chinese brands come into New Zealand, and that's going to be an interesting thing. So yeah.
Just a couple of points on that, because these are good touch points to talk about. First of all, the parts network that has been problematic in the past with newer entrant brands, with the promised parts and service for 10 years not actually living up to its promises. Just because something is available online and on indent doesn't mean to say you can actually get it, and that's been problematic for some of the earlier Chinese entrants in the marketplace. And secondly, from a used industry perspective, not even used importers, just dealers that specialize in used New Zealand new vehicles, there's still a real concern about trading. And it's all very well now, it's being sold new. But a lot of the stuff right now, how do you trade it? How do you put a value on it? Like, I know myself, we would probably not touch some of the stuff right now as a trade, because there's just so much uncertainty about its ability to be resold into the non-franchise, the non-franchise marketplace. And I think there's a lot of hesitation. If you talk to the wholesale guys in the industry, a lot of hesitation to touch this stuff because you just don't know where it's going to go and whether you can get off it. It's all very well holding it within the brands, but you can only hold so much for so long. How is this going to reflect in the used vehicle marketplace?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? The
and how do you finance it, Amos? How do you finance it?
Oh, what I was going to say is you just don't want to give the client the first price. You want someone else. You want someone else to destroy their dream. But
an interesting one is BYD. I think my understanding is that BYD, particularly Warren Walmart, they're working to quite actively manage the used market at this point. So they actually want to make sure that they do work to not destroy residuals, and whether that means that they, I wouldn't say buy stuff back, but try and funnel trade-ins, particularly certain things through various channels, and do work smartly as opposed to what Tesla did and repeatedly destroyed the value of the vehicles they just sold to people, is quite an interesting thing. But yeah, what is a 10-year-old BYD going to be worth? I don't know. I'm keeping mine for the warranty period. They're flicking it on.
I think as well, a lot of that comes back to the stability and the growth of the actual dealer as well. So BYD dealer in Christchurch, Cochrane Motor Group, Euromark, that group, that's a big group, and he would have the confidence in having a crack at that second time round product. And if it was in the hand, this is my opinion, if it was in the hands of someone like a little bit smaller or, doesn't have confidence in the product so much the second time round, I think that's where you get real damage to that pricing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another interesting dynamic, I think, with this Chinese stuff is quite often, in the past, we sort of these newcomer brands go in and they'd pair up with like small dealers, maybe try and go with a used import dealer that was lifting themselves into the new space or so forth. This time with brands like BYD and Amoda, they're going and partnering with fairly substantial existing dealer networks, and a lot of them are premium ones looking for a volume option, essentially, a value option, volume option. And that must be an interesting thing to scale when you're used to having a brand where you might sell, 10 a month, don't ignore the numbers, 10 a month of a premium model at a fairly high profit rate, to going and suddenly having someone like BYD coming through and you're trying to put 150 units out the door. That must be such an interesting thing to scale for. It's not necessarily good, but it's not necessarily bad. It's just an interesting way of looking at stuff. I think even within a Tico's own business, that was a business that might have been selling 100 cars a month. Yeah, and they're now selling 600-700 a month. That's kind of crazy with these new opportunities coming through. And yeah, we'll see. Now, a few more stories before we go. Daughter takes over from dad as dealership chief executive. Lisa Wilson has succeeded her father, Pete Robinson, as chief executive of the family-owned business North Otago Toyota Oamaru. In January, Robinson says after 31 years, the timing was right for the transition of the leadership position to his daughter, and he'll remain with the company as a shareholder and director. He plans to move into a sales consultant role, supporting Wilson as the new chief executive, as well as his son Michael, who works in the business as the new vehicles manager. Robinson says that North Otago Toyota has been and will continue to be a core part of the community. So that's great to see. Interesting that he's gone back to the floor selling. You can take the salesman off the floor, but he's going to find his way back. I've seen that a few times. Old retired dealers go back and go and sit a few days on the floor on a regular basis. I think, speaking to several years back to Gary Perriam at Giltrap Audi, may not be the case at the moment. When Colin was in country, he had a habit of going and sitting down on the floor at some of his dealerships and working out what was going on. Do you ever go back? Do you ever go back to the floor, Amos, and sell a few cars at some of your dealerships? Some of the dealerships.
Yeah, I love it. Or even friend yards, like just talking to people or moving around cars. I don't think you ever lose the love of that, or like my big. I love a yard change, massive fan, and so moving those cars around and yeah.
I've always been tempted, and Graham, you might be able to facilitate this, to go and spend a few weekends as an entry-level salesperson on a yard and see what it's like. See what the reality is like selling cars for a living.
Come on in, the water's fine, Richard.
Would you trust me? That's the question. Would you trust me? Anyway.
Well,
I
we
think
just
I
might
actually
have to
pretty good
have
with
somebody writing over your coattails for the closing process, perhaps. They don't end up giving everything away or losing your words. But I can't imagine a man like you would be short on a few words to say. But,
I've always thought that I'd be okay at it, and that if all this media career goes away, I could go and find myself a career in car sales. I'd probably make way more money than I do now.
you get to talk shit for a living as it is now. Why not just add it to your repertoire? Go on to a dealership and do it.
Right. ChargeNet adds 8 Victor EV charging sites. Raise the EV lords. The free Victor charging that caused terrible habits in Auckland is gone. You got to pay for it now. That was a hilarious example of what happens if you give stuff away for free. You would literally see people in $80,000 cars queuing at 2 a.m. to get their free, sweet 30-minute hit of electricity. Don't give stuff away for free. It creates bad habits.
That's why they can afford the $80,000 car, Richard.
Now, Customs seizes ecstasy and methamphetamine from imported vans. Customs seized significant quantities of methamphetamine and MDMA ecstasy following searches of imported vehicles. Customs discovered nearly 150 kilograms of MDMA and 67 kilograms of meth in the panels of vans which had recently arrived at the port of Auckland. I'm trying to look at that X-ray, trying to work out what van that is.
Well, it says it's from Europe. So were they new or used? I'm guessing they were used. Were they?
Yes, yeah.
Or new?
The size of it looks like it's either it looks like it's a Transit Custom or a Renault, maybe. That little kink in the back window there.
It's an interesting point, and I'm not just being smart about this, is were they new vans or used vans? Because this, as we know, there's bugger all used coming in from Europe right now. That market is slight, so they're released. And so arguably the chance of detection on a European vehicle, given the inspection regime, be moderately high. I'm just curious to know where the system has been breached.
They haven't released the data, and I suspect they won't. I think they probably want to keep that.
It's good that you've thought about that too, Graham.
Yeah. Okay, so my little 2 seconds of surfing photos of vans online. Looking at this, looking at it. It's this kink in the rear window. That's what's got me. It's
like a bloody I Spy book of, schoolboy's book of cars, isn't it? All over again.
Yes, yeah, it totally is. It totally is.
Anyone old enough as me remember the old Ollie Slager organisation, Automobiles of the World, the little books you used to get. They're about that size, like a little pocket book. And every year they released a new one which had a fantastic black and white photos of all the vehicles available for sale around the world. I used to just pour over those with all the statistics, just pour over them. They were I've still got them all too.
I think that van is a Peugeot Expert or similar Stellantis product. But I might be wrong. Anyway, a lot of drugs. And yeah, I kind of don't understand how the question is how the cars would have gotten into the system. Now, is this someone who's bought vans and exported them for the purpose of hiding drugs, or is it someone at the port that's gone and hidden drugs in the van at the port and it's got nothing to do with them? So yeah, interesting one. A lot of drugs. One heck of a party. Armstrong's executives take stake in online dealer platform. So dealer-only vehicle trading platform Auction Online has received financial backing from 3 prominent figures in New Zealand's automotive industry. The platform, founded by entrepreneurs Rue Santos and Ben Carancho, has been operating for 5 years and has up to 850 dealers on its books. In a recent move, Rick Armstrong, Mark Darrow, and Troy Kennedy. So that's Rick Armstrong, the dealer, Mark Darrow, who's the chairman of Armstrong Motor Group, and Troy Kennedy, the chief financial officer, taking a 40% stake in the company. That is a platform for car dealers selling trades to dealers. You can read more about that deal in AutoTalk, the magazine out today. We've got an interview with Rue and Mark Darrow. So really cool story there to see that there. We're seeing a lot of this kind of stuff building at the moment. We've got this, we've got AutoFlip, a few other things. Maybe there might be plugins for them going into Accelerate one day, Amos, just throwing an idea out there, sell your trade straight at your website. So interesting to see that software stuff coming up. Turner's on track for more record profit. Turner's Automotive Group is updating its financial year 24 guidance to a net profit before tax of at least $48 million, ahead of the $45.5 million achieved in the previous financial year. So more profit for them. They're doing very well. Major DMS supplier hacked. Police involved. A significant number of dealer management systems. A significant supplier of dealer management systems to the New Zealand industry has been attacked by offshore hackers. OXO, which provides services and softwares to dealers and workshops under the Sam, Orion, Synergy, and Autoline brands, confirmed the action in a release this morning. Well, that was dated last week. New Zealand Police, CERT NZ, and the Officer of Privacy Commissioner have been notified. They've contacted all customers to let them know the issue, and they've taken urgent steps to secure relevant systems. CEO David Murdoch said the company has been working around the clock since learning of the issue. We want to assure our customers that we always take the security of their information extremely seriously. They're not going to comment further on it because legal reasons. Now, we've had a couple of hacks lately. We saw the Eagers Group dealers get hacked. Now, this, Amos, how you run a couple of big software systems. How important is security? Must be a big chunk of the job. I know for your systems that Better runs off, and then I guess now Accelerate.
100%. And a lot of that is run out of Auckland. We have a lot of, there's certain stages of logins, permissions. And you've always got to be pivoting as well. Super important. Yeah.
So it's, if you are on one of those systems, just touch base with your rep, make sure that you're all sorted. Smitherman moves to EV Direct. The Australian distributor of BYD Automotive, EV Direct, has appointed David Smitherman as its new chief executive. Smitherman previously held 4 senior roles with the Atika Group, which he joined in 2000. He was a group accounting manager, then the commercial manager, and became chief executive of Atika Group New Zealand. And most recently, he was the GM of strategy. It was Smitherman who focused on setting up and managing the Ram Trucks business for the Atika Group in Australia and New Zealand. So a really big score there for EV Direct. Now, I think we'll finish on this story because this is a bit of a fun one. Retired Mitsubishi Motors NZ technical manager refurbishes police flying wedge.
It's not showing on screen, Richard.
Oh, sorry. There we go. A unique Mitsubishi V3000 flying wedge patrol car that belongs to the New Zealand Police Museum has been rejuvenated by the Mitsubishi Motors New Zealand team. By the Mitsubishi Motors team Numa, who originally outfitted the car on the production line in 1988.
That's the cool part.
Future is to be displayed at Mitsubishi Motors New Zealand Todd Park, Porirua, while it's in running order and can be driven in park, so it won't deteriorate in the future. It will not be used for active duty, according to the police museum. The car's career began with Uphart's Ministry of Transport Traffic Safety Office in 1988 after it rolled off the production line in Porirua. Recently retired Mitsubishi Motors New Zealand Technical Services Manager Lloyd Robinson spent more than 4 months restoring the bodywork and mechanicals on the police V3000 sedan to refurbish it into a high-quality museum display artifact, thanks to the support of his previous employer. The car represents the story of the people, cars, and motorcycles that came across New Zealand Police from the Ministry of Transport in 1992. It wasn't just a physical transition, but a challenge for traffic officers to become police officers, and likewise a challenge for the police to learn and effectively enforce road rules and safety. New Zealand Police Museum Director Ron Carroll says. I'm going to zoom in. I'm not sure if this will make a difference on the... There you go. How is that for a car?
They were dangerous little suckers. Remember those? And I'm suddenly thinking, boy, am I just showing my age here and suddenly realizing that telling stories about those things back in my day, pursuing people that I know, but people that I know may or may not have been chased by one of these. They were a particularly devilishly quick motor vehicle by all accounts.
Well, they were a lot more powerful than the 6-cylinder Australian lumps that were on the road at the time.
Oh, they were pieces of shit by comparison to the rest of the fleet. These things were just a breath of toxic air to anybody who was trying to evade detection by the police because you couldn't outrun a V3000. Funnily enough, actually, when they did their final hurrah in the fleet, we actually bought a batch of them from Turner's, who used to sell the police cars. We bought a batch of them of black V3000s. I think 5 or 6 of them, and they're just taken a can of spray painted over the doors with black spray, so they were just black V3000 sedans. And those things used to fly. They were so quick. Whether it was because they had a police specification or they had just been flogged so mercilessly that they were pretty loose and happy at any speed, I don't know, but it was certainly very rapid cars. So yeah, we actually picked up, I think, one of the last batches of these available when they came in the marketplace.
Yeah.
A friend of mine until very recently had one stashed away.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at I'm trying to find some specs on what the kind of performance of them was compared to the old 4-cylinder ones, but can't seem to find a lot of detail, unfortunately.
Well, compared to a Magna, for example, a Magna is pretty much 0 to 100 by next week sometime in a cup of coffee. And these things were actually, I don't think they ran Magnas anyway, or if they did, they should be ashamed of themselves. But the V3000 was, I think, one of the first seriously quick patrol performance cars they had in the fleet. And the other one that no one ever talks about now was they had MG Montego turbos. They had, I think, 4 or 5 of the, was it Montego turbos? Didn't last very long in the fleet, but they were at the same time as the V3000, and they were also devilishly quick pursuit cars.
I think the scary one they had was, well, not scary, but the one you didn't want chasing you. A few years later, was they had 180 SXs based out of the Highway Patrol Base at Bulls. Automatics, non-liveried, so fairly
Is
well
that
hidden.
the myth, or is that true? I've heard that story, but I've never seen any verification of the part.
That is true,
I know
and I have seen video of them
really
running. I saw a TV news article going out with them in the 180 SXs. They were real vehicles. They were based out of the Central North Island, and I think they were fairly short-lived, but yeah, they were real. I think they were in the order of about 130 kilowatts. Those V3000s output at a time when the XF Falcons that they were kind of competing with on the fleet had 105 kilowatts and were about twice the weight.
Yeah.
So they would have been a weapon. They would have been a torque steering weapon, but they would have been a weapon.
Oh yes, scary in the wet and all that sort of stuff. But no, well done to the team for restoring this little beauty, which gives me shivers down my spine to see even today. But they
Yes, yeah, that's all right. I'm luckily young enough that I never saw one of these come up in my rear vision mirror, but I do vaguely remember them from being a kid. Did one ever pull you over, Graham?
People I know may have happened to come across one of those in the line of their execution of their public duties. Just people I know what I know, of course, but I've just heard.
Political answer.
Is my insurance company listening to this? The rules have ears.
Yes, anyway, look, that has been a very long episode after we said that we would try and not do crazy stuff. Crazy long
20
stuff.
minutes must be really pissed off with us now.
Yes, exactly. So look, we'll catch you next week. Don't forget, go to autotalk.co.nz/live, buy some tickets to the show, magazine email, and a couple of things coming out today. And we'll catch you next time with, I'm hoping, I'm going to find some evidence of those police Nissan 180 SXs, 206, whatever they were.
I want to see it. Proof.
Yes.
Proof.
On the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap. We'll catch everyone next week.